15 years had passed since Michael Jackson, the king of pop, had left the world. Even after all this time, his name still carried an electric energy. Every time someone played his songs, millions would hum along, dance, or simply remember the moments when his music touched their lives. From Thriller to Billie Jean, his songs had become more than just music. They were memories, emotions, and stories that people carried with them. His influence stretched beyond music. He had changed dance, fashion, and the way people thought about performance. But while the world celebrated his talent, it was the man behind the glitter and fame that had always fascinated people. Who was Michael Jackson when the cameras weren't on? What thoughts, fears, and dreams did he carry in the quiet moments? It was this curiosity that kept fans around the world glued to any news related to him. People spoke of his generosity, his shy smile, the way he would light up a room without saying much. But there were also whispers of a troubled life, struggles with fame, personal loss, and the pressures of being one of the most famous people the world had ever seen. Over the years, documentaries, interviews, and books tried to paint a picture of him. Some succeeded. Others only raised more questions. Despite the many stories, there was always a sense that something about Michael Jackson remained hidden, a part of him that the world might never truly understand. As the 15th anniversary of his death approached, something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would ignite curiosity and emotions like never before. Rumors had started circulating that his tomb, resting quietly for all these years, might be opened. At first, people dismissed it as a wild idea. After all, opening a tomb is not something done lightly. There were rules, laws, and most importantly, respect for the person who had passed. Yet the whispers continued, growing louder. Some said historians and music experts had convinced authorities that examining his final resting place could reveal important historical artifacts. Others believed there were personal secrets or letters buried alongside him, waiting to be discovered. The thought alone made fans feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness. On one hand, they longed to know more about the man they had admired for decades. On the other hand, it felt almost sacred, even unsettling, to think of someone disturbing his resting place. Across the globe, fan clubs started discussing what might be found. Would there be unreleased recordings of his music? Could there be personal letters or diaries revealing his private thoughts? The speculation was endless. People shared stories on social media, debated in forums, and even held small gatherings to remember Michael and discuss the possibility of these revelations. Among the fans, there was also a sense of nostalgia. Older fans remembered seeing him perform live, while younger generations had discovered him through videos, documentaries, and family stories. Regardless of age, people felt connected to him. It was as if opening the tomb could bridge the gap between the past and the present, allowing them to feel closer to him once again. For many, Michael Jackson was more than an entertainer. He had become a symbol of creativity, perseverance, and the power of dreams. His music had inspired millions to dance, sing, and express themselves, and the thought of uncovering something personal about him made people feel like they might catch a glimpse of the real man behind the legend. The media, as expected, caught wind of the rumors almost immediately. Reporters started digging into details, interviewing historians, biographers, and even some of Michael's former colleagues. Each conversation added another layer to the story, mixing facts with speculation. Newspapers published articles with titles designed to capture attention. Michael Jackson's Tomb, What Secrets Lie Within. And 15 years later, the king of pop may speak again. Television networks ran short segments showing old footage of Michael's concerts, childhood and behind-the-scenes moments, creating an emotional backdrop for the story. It was everywhere. People couldn't avoid it, and the curiosity only grew. For those who had been closest to Michael, friends, family members, and collaborators, the rumors brought back memories of grief and love. Some felt anxious about what might be revealed, worried that private thoughts could be exposed to the world. Others were cautiously optimistic, hoping that the discovery might celebrate Michael's life in a way that documentaries and biographies hadn't fully captured. There was a mix of fear, excitement, and reverence in the air. Opening a tomb was not just a historical act. It was deeply personal. It reminded everyone that behind the legend, there had been a human being with dreams, fears, and emotions just like theirs. As the day to reopen the tomb approached, the anticipation reached a fever pitch. Fans planned to gather near the site, some traveling from distant countries just to witness the event from afar. Social media platforms were filled with countdowns, messages of love and memories of Michael. Musicians prepared tributes, dancers rehearsed routines inspired by his signature moves, and journalists readied cameras and microphones. There was a shared understanding that this was more than a story. It was a moment where the world would reconnect with a man who had left such an indelible mark on music and culture. Even with all the preparation, the world held its breath. The tomb had remained untouched for 15 years. Inside, Michael's resting place had been private, silent, and peaceful. People wondered what it must have been like inside, quiet, solemn, and untouched by time. The idea of opening it brought both reverence and apprehension. Fans imagined the personal artifacts, letters, and memorabilia that might lie within. They wondered if they would finally understand Michael Jackson in a way they hadn't before. If they would glimpse the dreams and struggles he had carried in his final days. In the weeks leading up to the opening, speculation alone kept millions of hearts racing. Fans remembered Michael's performances, his voice, and the magic he created on stage. They reflected on how his music had been there for them during good times and bad, how it had been a constant companion in a world that often felt uncertain. The possibility of discovering something personal about him made those memories even more poignant. People wrote letters, shared stories of how his songs had touched their lives, and celebrated the impact he had made. It was a reminder that Michael Jackson's influence had never faded. Even after all these years, the story of Michael Jackson's life, his music, and now the rumors of his tomb being opened reminded the world that fame, talent, and legacy are deeply human experiences. People felt emotions, love, grief, curiosity, hope, that transcended borders, age, and culture. They were drawn together by a shared sense of wonder, by a desire to connect with a man whose life had been so public yet remained in many ways a mystery. And so, as the world waited, there was a collective sense of anticipation, a quiet understanding that whatever was discovered inside the tomb would not only tell the story of Michael Jackson's life but also reflect the dreams and memories of everyone who had been touched by his music. 15 years after his passing, Michael Jackson was about to speak again, not in words, but through the objects, letters, and memories that had remained hidden. The world waited with bated breath, hearts full of hope, curiosity, and love, ready to reconnect with a man who had changed the face of music forever. And in that anticipation there was a sense of magic, as if the king of pop was about to remind everyone why he had been, and always would be, unforgettable. The decision to reopen Michael Jackson's tomb did not happen overnight. It took months of planning, careful thought, and coordination between authorities, historians, and forensic experts. At first, the idea seemed almost impossible to many. After all, the king of pop was not just any celebrity. His tomb had been sealed for 15 years, and disturbing it was not something done lightly. Legal permissions had to be sought, documents had to be signed, and every step was scrutinized by those who wanted to ensure respect for Michael Jackson's memory. For some, the thought of opening his tomb felt intrusive, almost disrespectful. For others, it was an opportunity to honor his life, to uncover pieces of his story that had remained hidden for too long. The experts involved understood the weight of the task. They were not just opening a tomb, they were entering a sacred space that had been untouched for over a decade. Every detail had to be perfect. Specialized teams were called in, people skilled in preservation, history, and forensics. They studied the construction of the tomb, the materials used, and the security measures in place. Nothing was left to chance. The goal was simple yet delicate, to uncover what was inside while keeping it intact, respecting the memory of a man who had inspired millions. News of the reopening spread quickly. Fans, of course, were the first to react. Social media platforms were flooded with posts expressing excitement, curiosity, and even concern. Could there really be personal letters inside? One fan wondered. Another wrote, "I hope this shows the real Michael Jackson, the man we never truly knew." The speculation was endless, and each comment seemed to add to the growing anticipation. People shared memories of concerts, interviews, and moments when Michael's music had touched their hearts. The reopening of the tomb became more than a historical event. It became a shared emotional experience, connecting fans from every corner of the globe. Outside the tomb, preparations were underway. Security personnel were stationed around the area to ensure everything went smoothly. Cameras were set up to document the entire process, both for historical records and for the millions of people who would watch from home. Reporters and journalists gathered, notebooks in hand, trying to capture every detail and anticipate what might be found. Some felt a thrill, while others were quietly anxious, knowing that whatever lay inside would be something very personal. Fans who could not be there in person organized viewing parties, ready to watch the event live, feeling a part of history as it unfolded. Inside the tomb, every step of the preparation was precise. Special equipment was brought in to carefully lift the heavy lid without causing any damage. Experts wore gloves and masks, handling every tool with care. The air was thick with tension and respect. They knew that Michael Jackson's legacy was priceless, and even the smallest mistake could change the course of history. As they worked, they talked quietly among themselves, sharing their own memories of Michael, how his music had influenced them, and the honor they felt to be a part of such an important moment. There was a sense of unity, of shared purpose that made the experience deeply human. The anticipation outside the tomb was almost unbearable. Fans waited in silence, their emotions mixed. Some held signs, expressing love and admiration for Michael. Others quietly remembered the concerts they had attended or the songs that had carried them through difficult times. Across the world, millions were glued to screens, watching as the process unfolded. The reopening of the tomb was not just a story. It was a moment that allowed people to reconnect with Michael Jackson, to feel closer to him than they had in years. As the day approached, historians and experts gave brief statements to the media. They explained that the purpose of opening the tomb was not to invade Michael Jackson's privacy, but to preserve history. They hoped to discover personal artifacts, letters or memorabilia that could give the world a deeper understanding of the man behind the music. These revelations would allow fans to see a side of Michael they had never known, to understand his thoughts, dreams, and struggles. The message was clear. This was about honoring his legacy, not exploiting it. Families and friends of Michael Jackson watched from a distance, some feeling anxious, others hopeful. They knew that opening the tomb could reveal personal aspects of his life that had never been shared. It was a delicate balance between curiosity and respect. Many shared their thoughts quietly, reflecting on the life of a man who had given so much to the world while keeping much of himself private. The anticipation created a mixture of emotions: grief, hope, excitement, and a deep sense of connection to someone who had touched so many lives. The media coverage added another layer of intensity. News anchors described the preparations in detail, showing footage of the tomb, the security, and the teams involved. Commentators discussed what might be discovered, debating whether there could be unreleased recordings, personal letters, or memorabilia that revealed unknown aspects of Michael's life. The speculation was endless, but it kept viewers engaged, emotionally invested in the event. It was as if the world was collectively holding its breath, waiting for a glimpse into the life of a man who had fascinated generations. Even the ordinary fans, those who had never met Michael Jackson, felt a personal connection to the story. His music had been a constant in their lives, a source of joy and comfort. They imagined the tomb being opened, the discoveries being carefully revealed, and they felt as if they were there, standing alongside the experts and fans alike. The emotions were raw and human, a mix of nostalgia, curiosity, and reverence. It was a reminder that Michael Jackson's influence went far beyond entertainment. It had shaped lives, memories, and emotions in profound ways. The final preparations inside the tomb took hours. Experts double-checked equipment, ensured that lighting and cameras were set up perfectly, and reviewed every step of the procedure. There was a quiet reverence in the air, a sense that they were about to witness something extraordinary. Outside, fans waited patiently, understanding that this was not just an event, but a moment of historical significance. The tension was almost tangible, a shared energy that connected everyone present and millions more watching from home. As the moment approached, there was a collective sense of respect and anticipation. The teams working inside the tomb were aware that they carried a great responsibility. They were not just opening a tomb. They were opening a window into the life of a man who had touched millions. Every step, every movement had to be done with care, precision, and love. The world watched, waiting for the first glimpse of what had been hidden for 15 years, ready to reconnect with the king of pop in a way that felt personal, emotional, and deeply human. The decision to reopen Michael Jackson's tomb was more than a historical act. It was a celebration of his life, a chance for fans to reconnect with the man behind the music, and an opportunity to preserve history. It reminded the world that, even in death, Michael Jackson's legacy remained alive, powerful, and profoundly human. The anticipation, the preparations, and the emotions all set the stage for a moment that no one would forget. A moment where history, curiosity, and love for a legendary artist converged in a single, unforgettable event. The day had finally arrived. After months of careful planning, legal approvals, and preparation, the team was ready to open Michael Jackson's tomb. The atmosphere outside was electric. Fans had gathered quietly, some holding signs and candles, others simply standing in awe. Many had traveled from faraway places, drawn by the hope of witnessing history. Cameras and media crews were everywhere, capturing every moment for the millions watching around the world. There was a mix of excitement and nervousness in the air. People whispered to each other, speculating about what might be inside. Would they find personal letters, unreleased music, or hidden memories that revealed the man behind the legend? Inside the tomb, the team moved with precision. Every step had been practiced, every tool carefully chosen. The heavy stone lid had been in place for 15 years, and lifting it required skill, patience, and respect. The air was quiet, heavy with anticipation. Everyone knew they were about to see something that had remained untouched for more than a decade, a part of history frozen in time. The moment felt sacred. Even the professionals used to handling delicate operations could feel the weight of what they were about to do. Slowly, the locks were undone, one by one. The crowd outside held its collective breath. Cameras captured every detail, every hand movement, every pause. When the lid was finally lifted, a faint light illuminated the inside. The first glimpse revealed the sarcophagus, untouched and solemn, holding the remains of a man whose music had touched millions. There was a moment of silence, as if the world itself paused to honor him. Fans outside could barely contain their emotions. Some held back tears, remembering concerts, songs, and moments when Michael's voice had been a comfort or a source of joy. As the experts began examining the interior, they noticed more than just the sarcophagus. Carefully arranged around it were personal items, objects that had clearly been chosen with thought and care. There were letters, some handwritten and folded neatly, others in envelopes that had never been opened. Journals were placed delicately, their pages yellowed with time, but preserved. Musical notes, sketches, and even some unfinished lyrics were found, giving a glimpse into the creative mind of a man who had always been known for his perfectionism. Each item told a story, revealing a side of Michael Jackson that had rarely been seen by the public. The reaction outside was immediate. Fans gasped as images of the discoveries were shared on screens. Social media exploded with posts, videos, and live reactions. People debated what they were seeing, trying to interpret the letters, sketches, and notes. Some were overwhelmed with emotion, feeling closer to Michael than ever before. Others were fascinated by the sheer amount of personal material that had been preserved so carefully. It was as if the tomb itself was speaking, offering a private glimpse into the life of the king of pop. Among the items, the handwritten letters attracted the most attention. Some were addressed to family members, expressing love and care, while others seemed like personal reflections, thoughts written late at night. One letter spoke about the pressures of fame, the loneliness that often accompanied success, and the desire to be remembered not just as an entertainer, but as a human being. Another contained sketches of dance moves and stage designs, ideas that had never made it to the public stage. These discoveries revealed the depth of his creativity and the intensity with which he approached his art. The experts were careful to document everything. Every note, letter, and object was photographed, cataloged, and preserved. They handled each piece with gloves, ensuring that nothing was damaged. As they worked, They discussed the importance of the finds, noting how each item added to the understanding of Michael Jackson as a person, not just as a celebrity. The process was slow, deliberate, and respectful, reflecting the reverence that everyone felt in that moment. Fans watching from around the world were captivated. Live streams showed the interior of the tomb, the experts carefully examining items and close-ups of letters and sketches. Reactions poured in, some cried, some smiled, and some simply stared in awe. Many shared personal stories of how Michael's music had touched their lives, connecting their experiences to the discoveries being made. It was a collective moment of remembrance, reflection, and appreciation. People felt a renewed sense of connection to him, as if the tomb had opened not just to reveal objects but to bridge the gap between the past and the present. Among the more surprising discoveries were some unreleased recordings. Small, delicate tapes had been tucked away, labeled in Michael's handwriting. Experts speculated that these were experimental tracks, ideas that had never been finalized. The excitement was palpable. Fans and music historians knew that even a short clip of unreleased music would be a treasure, offering insights into Michael's creative process. These recordings, combined with the letters and sketches, painted a picture of a man who was always working, always dreaming, and always striving for perfection. There were also personal mementos, small objects that carried deep meaning, items from his childhood, gifts from friends, and even some personal keepsakes that reflected his private life were found. Each object told a story, offering a glimpse into the humanity behind the fame. Fans were touched by these discoveries, feeling that they had finally been given a chance to see the real Michael Jackson. Not the superstar, but the man who laughed, loved, and dreamed just like everyone else. The atmosphere outside remained electric. Fans whispered to each other, shared their thoughts, and reflected on memories. Some recalled seeing him live. Others remembered the first time they heard his songs. There was a sense of shared experience, of being part of something larger than themselves. It was more than curiosity, it was a deep emotional connection. The discoveries inside the tomb were not just historical artifacts. They were reminders of the impact Michael Jackson had on millions of lives, a connection that remained strong even 15 years after his passing. As the day went on, the team continued their work with careful attention. They were aware that what they were uncovering was priceless, not just in monetary terms but in emotional and cultural value. Each item was handled with love and care, photographed and documented. Experts discussed how the materials could be preserved for future generations, ensuring that Michael Jackson's legacy would continue to inspire and touch lives for years to come. The reactions of fans were heartfelt. Many expressed gratitude for being allowed to witness the process even from a distance. Others felt a sense of closure, finally understanding more about the man who had been a part of their lives for so long. There was an overwhelming feeling of connection, as if the tomb had allowed people to step inside Michael's world, even briefly, and see the thoughts, dreams, and creativity that had driven him throughout his life. By the end of the day, the initial examination of the tomb had revealed more than anyone had anticipated. Personal letters, journals, sketches, musical notes, and mementos painted a rich human picture of Michael Jackson. The discoveries showed the man behind the superstar, the dreamer, the artist, and the person who had felt deeply, loved intensely, and worked tirelessly to create something beautiful for the world. Fans and experts alike left with a sense of wonder, respect, and a renewed appreciation for his life and legacy. Even as the tomb was carefully closed again, the impact of the discoveries continued to resonate. Fans would talk about the event for years, sharing the stories, letters, and sketches with others. The world had been given a rare glimpse into the private life of a legend, a reminder that behind every famous person is a human being with dreams, struggles, and emotions that are universally relatable. Michael Jackson's tomb had opened, and in doing so it had brought the world closer to understanding the man who had touched so many hearts. The day ended not with a sense of finality, but with hope. Hope that these discoveries would be shared respectfully, that fans would continue to celebrate his music, and that future generations would learn not just about the King of Pop, but about the humanity that made his art so timeless. The moment was historic, emotional, and deeply human, a reminder that Michael Jackson's influence extended far beyond the stage, reaching into the hearts and memories of people around the world. The news of what was discovered inside Michael Jackson's tomb spread around the world like wildfire. Within hours, millions of people had seen photographs of the letters, journals, sketches, and even the unreleased music recordings. Social media platforms were flooded with posts, comments, and videos. Fans reacted in ways that were deeply emotional. Some cried, some smiled, and some could barely believe what they were seeing. For 15 years, people had wondered about the private life of Michael Jackson, and now, finally, they had a glimpse of the man behind the music. The reaction was not limited to fans alone. Music experts, historians, and biographers analyzed every detail of the findings. They debated the significance of the letters, the sketches, and the small personal objects that had been preserved so carefully. Many expressed amazement at the level of care Michael Jackson had taken in keeping his personal thoughts and creations. Some saw the discoveries as a treasure trove for understanding his creative mind, while others focused on the human side, the struggles, emotions, and dreams revealed in his personal writings. It became clear that these artifacts were not just memorabilia. They were windows into his soul. News outlets around the globe ran special segments on the discovery. Television anchors recounted Michael Jackson's life, playing clips of his performances and highlighting the items found inside the tomb. Journalists interviewed fans outside the site, capturing their emotional reactions. Many shared stories of how his music had been a source of comfort, inspiration, or joy during their lives. One young fan spoke about how hearing Michael's voice helped them through a difficult time in childhood, while an older fan reminisced about seeing him perform live decades ago. The shared human connection was palpable, and it reminded everyone that Michael Jackson's influence went far beyond his fame. As the initial shock and excitement settled, discussions about the findings grew deeper. Fans began to interpret the letters and sketches in their own ways. Some saw messages of hope and resilience, while others noticed glimpses of loneliness and the pressures that came with being a global superstar. The unreleased recordings became a source of fascination, with experts and fans speculating about what Michael might have been thinking, creating, or dreaming as he worked on his music. Each note and page revealed layers of his personality, his dedication, his creativity, and his deep emotional sensitivity. The human side of the story resonated strongly with everyone. People were not only fascinated by the celebrity they had admired, but also by the man he had been in private. The letters showed vulnerability, the journals showed reflection, and the personal objects showed the life he had lived quietly, away from the public eye. Fans shared their feelings openly on social media, writing messages like, "I feel like I finally know him, and this shows how deeply he cared, not just about music, but about people." The connection was personal, emotional, and universal, reminding the world that even someone as famous as Michael Jackson experienced the same feelings, challenges, and dreams as everyone else. Meanwhile, historians and archivists worked to ensure that every discovery was documented and preserved. They discussed how these materials could be shared with the public in a respectful and educational way. Some suggested creating exhibitions, online archives, or documentaries that could allow people worldwide to learn about the private life of Michael Jackson while honoring his legacy. The focus was on education, respect, and connection, showing the humanity behind the fame rather than exploiting it for sensationalism. The discoveries also sparked debate among fans and the media. Some argued that opening the tomb was intrusive, a violation of privacy even after death. Others believed it was a unique opportunity to celebrate Michael's life and share his creative genius with the world. These conversations were intense but respectful, reflecting the strong emotional connection people had with him. It became clear that the tomb had become more than a physical space. It was a symbol of the curiosity, love, and admiration people had for the King of Pop. For families, friends, and close colleagues, the discoveries brought mixed emotions. Some were comforted to see Michael's private thoughts and creations being preserved carefully, feeling that his life was being honored in a meaningful way. Others felt the weight of exposure, knowing that personal aspects of his life were now shared publicly. In private conversations, they reflected on the challenges Michael had faced, the pressure of fame, the constant scrutiny, and the difficulty of living a normal life while being recognized everywhere he went. The findings provided context for those struggles, reminding the world that Michael Jackson, despite being a global icon, was still human. Across the world, Fans held small gatherings to discuss and celebrate the discoveries. They listened to the unreleased music, shared images of the sketches and letters, and recounted personal stories of how Michael Jackson had impacted their lives. Into living rooms, community centers, and online spaces, people connected over a shared sense of wonder, nostalgia, and gratitude. It was not just about what had been found. It was about what these discoveries represented, the enduring connection between Michael Jackson and the millions who had loved his music and admired his artistry. The social media reaction was overwhelming. Videos of fans reacting to the discoveries went viral. Some people cried as they saw the personal letters, feeling a new closeness to Michael. Others laughed with joy at seeing his creative sketches and stage designs. Many wrote heartfelt messages expressing gratitude for his music, his creativity, and the legacy he had left behind. It was a global emotional moment, uniting people from different countries, backgrounds, and ages through a shared admiration for Michael Jackson. Even experts admitted that the finds were extraordinary. They marveled at the detail and care Michael had taken in preserving his work. The letters, journals, and sketches offered insight into his creative process, his dedication, and the emotional depth behind his music. Some experts speculated that the unreleased recordings might one day be completed or shared in a way that honored his vision. Others noted that the personal letters could provide context for understanding the man behind the fame, his struggles, and his hopes. The discoveries were rich with meaning, both historically and emotionally. Throughout it all, the world seemed to pause and reflect. Fans and casual observers alike considered the impact of fame, artistry, and human emotion. Michael Jackson's life had been extraordinary in so many ways, but the discoveries reminded everyone that he was also deeply human. He had loved, struggled, dreamed, and created just like everyone else. This realization made the discoveries even more powerful, as they showed the man behind the global persona, a man who had lived a life full of creativity, emotion, and complexity. The excitement gradually transformed into reflection. People began to think about their own lives, their own dreams, and the impact they hoped to have on the world. Michael Jackson's tomb had been opened, and in a sense, it had opened hearts and minds as well. Fans realized that his influence went beyond entertainment. It was about connection, inspiration, and the reminder that even someone as famous as Michael Jackson faced challenges, felt emotions deeply, and expressed himself through his art. By the end of the week, the world had begun to process the discoveries. News stories continued to highlight the letters, journals, sketches, and recordings. Fans continued to share their reactions online, and experts worked to preserve and interpret every item carefully. The global conversation had shifted from curiosity to understanding, reflection, and celebration. People realized that Michael Jackson's life was more than just music and fame. It was a story of creativity, humanity, and enduring influence. The reopening of the tomb had achieved something remarkable. It had allowed people to see Michael Jackson not just as a superstar, but as a human being, someone who had dreams, fears, struggles, and joys, just like anyone else. The world had been given a rare and intimate glimpse into his life, a moment that was both historic and deeply personal. Fans felt closer to him than they had in years, connected not just to the legend, but to the man who had lived, loved, and created in ways that touched millions of hearts. Even as the initial excitement began to settle, the emotional impact remained. Fans reflected on the discoveries, shared stories of how Michael's music had shaped their lives, and celebrated the creativity and humanity revealed through the letters, journals, and sketches. The tomb had been opened, but more importantly, it had reminded the world of what Michael Jackson had always represented: connection, creativity, and the enduring power of human emotion. In the end, the discoveries became a bridge between the past and the present, allowing people to remember, celebrate, and understand Michael Jackson in ways that had never been possible before. His music, his life, and now his personal artifacts had shown the world that even legends are human, and that the emotions, dreams, and struggles we all share are what truly connect us. Michael Jackson's tomb had been opened, and in doing so, it had opened the hearts of millions, leaving an impact that would be remembered for generations. After the world had witnessed the reopening of Michael Jackson's tomb and seen the treasures that lay within, there was a profound sense of reflection and reverence. The initial shock and excitement gradually gave way to a quieter, deeper understanding of the man behind the music. Fans, historians, and music experts alike began to speak not only about the discoveries, but about the life, struggles, and enduring spirit of Michael Jackson. For many, it was a reminder that legends are more than their public personas. They are human beings full of emotions, dreams, and vulnerabilities. People looked at the letters and journals with awe. Some letters expressed love and gratitude to family and friends, while others revealed his innermost thoughts about life, fame, and creativity. In these words, fans found a vulnerability they had rarely seen. They saw the pressures of being a global icon, the constant expectations, and the longing for moments of normalcy. Yet there was also hope, optimism, and a relentless dedication to art. These letters reminded people that even someone who seemed larger than life was human, someone who felt deeply, cared intensely, and wanted to leave a meaningful legacy. The sketches and musical notes drew widespread attention. Fans marveled at his creativity, the careful planning behind each performance, and the experimental ideas that never made it to the stage. The unreleased recordings were particularly special. They captured Michael Jackson in moments of private experimentation, revealing how tirelessly he worked on his music. Some recordings were rough, some melodic, and some experimental, but all reflected his genius, his dedication, and his endless pursuit of perfection. Listeners felt honored to hear the thoughts and ideas he had left behind, as though they were being allowed a private audience with the artist himself. Across the globe, fans gathered in homes, community centers, and online platforms to discuss what had been discovered. There was a sense of shared experience, a connection that transcended borders, language, and culture. People shared stories of how Michael's music had shaped their lives, the song that had helped them through heartbreak, the performance that had inspired them to dance, or the message in a lyric that had encouraged them to keep going during difficult times. In every conversation, there was a recognition that Michael Jackson's influence had always been deeply human, touching hearts and minds in ways that went far beyond fame. Many experts emphasized that the importance of the discoveries lay not only in historical value, but in their ability to help people understand the humanity of Michael Jackson. The personal objects, letters, and recordings revealed someone who had struggled, hoped, loved, and dreamed just like everyone else. They reminded the world that the man behind the music was more than a celebrity. He was a person with emotions, thoughts, and a creative spirit that resonated across generations. The tomb had opened, yes, but it had also opened hearts and minds, reminding people of the power of human connection through art. The discussion sparked a wider reflection on life, fame, and legacy. Fans debated what it meant to be remembered, to create something lasting, and to leave a mark on the world. Michael Jackson's tomb had shown them that legacy was not only about awards, records, or performances. It was also about the emotional impact on the people who loved and were inspired by you. His letters and journals illustrated this perfectly. They showed that he cared deeply about others, that he thought about the world, and that he worked tirelessly to express himself in ways that could touch hearts. The discoveries also inspired new artistic and educational projects. Documentaries, books, and exhibitions were planned to share the personal side of Michael Jackson with the world while preserving the integrity of his legacy. Musicians and dancers began experimenting with ideas drawn from the sketches and recordings, imagining how Michael might have developed them if he were still alive. In a way, the tomb had not only revealed the past but had sparked creativity in the present, showing that the influence of his life continued to grow, even 15 years after his passing. Fans reflected deeply on the lessons Michael Jackson's life could teach them. They realized that talent alone was not enough. It took dedication, resilience, and passion to achieve greatness. They saw that struggles and pressures were part of life, even for someone who seemed to have it all. And they understood that what mattered most was not fame, money, or recognition, but connection. The ability to touch others through your work, your words, and your actions. In this way, Michael Jackson's life became a source of inspiration, offering guidance and motivation to millions who wanted to leave their own mark on the world. Emotionally, the discoveries provided a sense of closure and connection for many. Fans had long wondered about the private life of Michael Jackson, speculated about his thoughts, and imagined what he might have felt. Now, through his letters, journals, and personal objects, they had a chance to understand him in a more complete way. They could see his struggles, his dreams, and his dedication, and in doing so they felt closer to him than ever before. It was a reminder that even when someone leaves the world,